Mein Name ist Bernhard Spies und ich bin der kaufmännische Direktor und Geschäftsführer des Hauses der Kunst. Meine Damen und Herren, Sie haben alle gelesen, Okwuenwesor hat aus gesundheitlichen Gründen das Amt des Geschäftsführers und künstlerischen Direktors niedergelegt. Eine Entscheidung, die man mit Respekt zur Kenntnis nehmen muss. Sie haben gelesen, er ist krank. Ich glaube, wir alle wünschen ihm von dieser Stelle her baldige Genesung, dass er dann auch wieder möglichst schnell fit wird und seinen Aufgaben an anderer Stelle nachgehen kann. Meine Damen und Herren, wir begrüßen heute Abend den Künstler Vivan Sundaram hier zu dieser Ausstellungseröffnung. And I warmly welcome you as the artist, Mr. Sundaram, here for this wonderful exhibition. Meine Damen und Herren, eine zweite Ausstellung wird hier heute eröffnet, Generations Part 2. Und dazu begrüße ich die Vertreter der Sammlung Goetz, die auch hier im Raume anwesend sind. Ja, gut. Ich bin der kaufmännische Direktor. Zu den Inhalten von Ausstellungen kann ich wenig sagen. Deswegen wird Ulrich Wilmes das gleich sehr ausführlich hier von dieser Stelle tun. Ich wünsche Ihnen, auch verbunden mal mit dem Dank an die Mitarbeiter des Hauses, die in relativ kurzer Zeit diese Ausstellung aufgebaut haben. Wie Sie vielleicht in der Presse gelesen haben, ich betreibe dieses Geschäft schon etwas länger. Ich bin erstaunt, wie schnell das hier dann auch mit dem Ausstellungsauf- und Umbau geht. Und es liegt auch darin, dass hier ein gut eingespieltes Team ist, dem natürlich auch Dank gebührt für Ihre Arbeit, die Sie hier geleistet haben. Soweit. Die Regie hat mir nur 5 Minuten gegeben, die sind jetzt rum, Herr Wilmes, jetzt sind Sie dran. Vielen Dank, ich wünsche Ihnen einen schönen Abend.
Vielen Dank, Herr Spies, für die freundlichen Worte der Einführung. Meine Damen und Herren, Herr Spies hat es schon angedeutet und ich möchte auch an dieser Stelle die Gelegenheit nutzen, einige Worte in eigener Sache zu sagen. Okwuenwesor ist zurückgetreten von seinem Amt als künstlerischer Direktor des Hauses. In den 7 Jahren seines Direktoriats hat Okwi die programmatische Ausrichtung des Hauses radikal erweitert und sein zeitgenössisches Profil damit entscheidend weiterentwickelt. Er hat das Haus der Kunst in die erste Reihe internationaler Destinationen für die Untersuchung und Diskussion zeitgenössischer Kunst geführt, was sich nicht zuletzt an der Vielzahl von Kooperationen mit weltweit führenden Museen ablesen lässt. Und gestatten Sie mir an dieser Stelle, dass ich ganz herzlich meine geschätzte Kollegin Frances Morris, die Direktorin der Tate Modern, begrüße hier heute Abend. Vom ersten Tag an hat Okwuenwesor uns die Augen für neue Inhalte geöffnet und unseren Blick auf die Kunst ausgedehnt. Es war ein Prozess, der uns als Team genauso herausgefordert hat wie Sie als unser Publikum. Ein Prozess, der in großen thematischen Ausstellungen wie Aufstieg und Fall der Apartheid und Postwar, Kunst zwischen Pazifik und Atlantik 1945 bis 1965, ebenso zum Ausdruck kam wie in den Einzelausstellungen, zum Beispiel mit Lorna Simpson, Kendall Gies, Lynette Yiadom-Boakye, Louise Bourgeois oder David Adjaye, um nur einige Beispiele herauszugreifen. Ich möchte heute anlässlich der ersten Eröffnung nach seinem Ausscheiden die Gelegenheit nutzen, Okwuenwesor für die großartige Zusammenarbeit herzlich zu danken. Es war eine besondere Ehre, in diesen 7 Jahren an seiner Seite das Haus der Kunst mitgestalten zu dürfen. Und ich wünsche ihm von Herzen alles erdenklich Gute für die baldige, vollständige Wiederherstellung seiner Gesundheit. Auch der Anstoß zu der Ausstellung, die wir heute Abend eröffnen, kam von Oquienvesor, den eine bereits über 20 Jahre währende intellektuelle Freundschaft mit Vivan Sundaram verbindet, der aber auch unabhängig davon bereits eine enge Beziehung zum Haus der Kunst geknüpft hatte, denn seine Arbeiten wurden zusammen mit denen seiner Tante, der indischen Malerin Amrita Shergill, und den Fotografien seines Großvaters, Umrao Singh Shergill, in der Ausstellung Amrita Shergill, eine indische Künstlerfamilie im 20. Jahrhundert, ausgestellt, die 2006 im Übrigen unter der Christerkon stattfand, den ich an dieser Stelle ebenfalls ganz herzlich in unserer Mitte begrüßen möchte. Vivan Sundarams Ausstellung Disjunctures, Umbrüche im Haus der Kunst, die von Deepak Ananth in Zusammenarbeit mit Anna Schneider eingerichtet wurde, ist die bislang umfassendste Ausstellung seiner Werke in Europa. Die hier versammelten Arbeiten umfassen 50 Jahre eines künstlerischen Schaffens, für die Deepak Ananth einen Parcours entworfen hat, der als ein offener thematischer Rahmen für die Erforschung und Darstellung der Zusammenhänge, Erweiterungen und Umbrüche in seinem Werk dient. Ich möchte an dieser Stelle auf weitere Bemerkungen zur Ausstellung verzichten und Sie stattdessen einladen zu einem Gespräch zwischen Vivan Sundaram und Deepak Ananth, das um 20 Uhr, nachdem Sie Gelegenheit hatten, die Ausstellung zu sehen, hier an gleicher Stelle stattfinden wird. Herzliche Einladung dazu an Sie alle. Mein großer Dank gilt allen, die am Gelingen der Ausstellung, so darf ich schon verraten, der großartigen Ausstellung beigetragen haben. Im Besonderen Deepak Ananth und Anna Schneider sowie dem gesamten Team des Haus der Kunst, das wieder mit großem Enthusiasmus und Einsatz das Projekt getragen hat. Darin einschließen möchte ich auch den langjährigen Assistenten von Vivan Sundaram, Pavat M. Ich danke allen Leihgebern, von denen ich stellvertretend Robina Karode vom Kiran Nadar Museum of Art in New Delhi begrüßen darf. Bedanken möchte ich mich außerdem beim indischen Generalkonsulat in München, namentlich bei Sungad Rajaram und dem Goethe-Institut in Neu-Delhi für ihre Unterstützung der Ausstellung. Last but not least möchte ich im Namen des gesamten Teams Vivan Sundaram für die freundschaftliche Verbundenheit danken, die uns eine wunderbare, inspirierende Ausstellung beschert hat. Vivan, thanks a lot for all your friendship and for the wonderful experience to donate us such a great exhibition. Thank you. Ich darf mich für Ihre Aufmerksamkeit bedanken und gebe jetzt das Wort an Cornelia Gockel und Susanne Touw, die Sie in die Einführung Generations Part 2, die in die Ausstellung einführen werden. So ist es. Vielen Dank.
Sehr geehrte Damen und Herren, auch wir freuen uns sehr, Sie zum heutigen Abend und zur Eröffnung der Ausstellung Generations – Künstlerinnen im Dialog Part 2 begrüßen zu dürfen. Von Beginn ihrer Sammlertätigkeit an hat sich Ingvild Goetz für die Werke von Frauen interessiert und sie auch umfangreich gesammelt. Daher sind heute ungefähr die Hälfte der über 5000 Arbeiten in der Sammlung Goetz Arbeiten von Künstlerinnen. Wir nehmen das 25-jährige Jubiläum der Sammlung Goetz gern zum Anlass, diese Arbeiten aus verschiedenen Jahrzehnten in einem generationenübergreifenden Dialog einander gegenüberzustellen. Um einen repräsentativen Querschnitt von Künstlerinnenpositionen seit den 1940er Jahren bis heute zeigen zu können, haben wir uns für einen dreiteiligen Ausstellungszyklus entschieden. Unter den insgesamt mehr als 200 Arbeiten von 40 Künstlerinnen, die wir in den 3 Ausstellungen präsentieren, sind namhafte Positionen wie Diane Arbes, Katharina Grosse, Jenny Holzer, Mona Hatoum oder Rosemarie Trockel, aber auch junge oder weniger bekannte Künstlerinnen. Der erste Teil, Generations Part 1, ist noch bis zum 30.06. bei uns im Sammlungsgebäude in der Oberföhringer Straße zu sehen. Wenn Sie also noch nicht da waren, kommen Sie gerne vorbei, wir freuen uns. Diese Ausstellung hier im Haus der Kunst ist der zweite Teil unserer Ausstellungsreihe und besteht überwiegend, aber nicht nur aus Medienkunst.
Ja, in Part 2, dem zweiten Teil, setzen wir den generationsübergreifenden Dialog fort. Der Schwerpunkt liegt auf bewegten Bildern, aber wir haben auch das Format, was bisher hier vorherrschte im ehemaligen Luftschutzkeller, der Präsentation eben von Einkanalfilmen, versucht etwas aufzubrechen und zeigen Filmstills, Fotografien und sogar Skulpturen, die im Zusammenhang mit den Filmen entstanden sind. Los geht's schon gleich im Eingangsbereich. Da begegnen wir dem Skelett von Nathalie Djurberg, das im Zusammenhang mit ihrem Film Turn Into Me entstanden ist. Nathalie Djurbergs Film entsteht als Knetanimation und der ist gleich im gegenüberliegenden Raum zu sehen. Der Film zeigt eine nackte Frau, sterbend durch den Wald taumelnd und zu Boden sinken. Und alsbald setzt dann ein schaurig schöner Verwesungsprozess an, wo Larven und Würmer und Aasfresser sich ihres Körpers bemächtigen und ihn bis auf das Skelett abnagen. Diese etwas makabre Szene wird aber ironisch gebrochen, also das Skelett erhebt sich dann zu einem makabren Totentanz. Ja, der weibliche Körper ist seit den 60er Jahren zum Schauplatz für vielfältige Diskurse geworden, philosophischer, soziologischer, politischer Natur. Und die Künstlerinnen in unserer Ausstellung greifen diese Themen auf und verhandeln sie in ihren Arbeiten. Es geht auch in diesem Zusammenhang um die Autonomie, ihnen um die Autonomie als Künstlerin, also weg von der traditionellen Rolle als Muse oder Modell, hin zur handelnden Subjekt, zur Autorin, die also selbstbestimmt, wie ihr Körper dargestellt wird und was sie von sich zeigt. Die Videokunst hat in diesem Zusammenhang auch eine große Bedeutung gehabt. In den 1960er Jahren, also als sie einen großen Aufschwung hatte, wurde sie schon eingesetzt wegen der leichten Handhabung für Aufzeichnung von Performances und Experimente im Atelier ganz alleine. Und man brauchte dafür kein aufwendiges Kameraequipment und auch keine anderen Menschen. Der älteste Film, den wir zeigen, ist von Yayoi Kusama aus den 1967er. Darin dokumentiert die japanische Künstlerin die Performances und Nackt-Happenings, die sie in den 1960er Jahren in New York aufgeführt hat. Yayoi Kusamas Leitmotiv sind die Polkadots, die kennen Sie sicher alle, also diese Punkte, mit denen sie ihre Umgebung, Tiere, Pflanzen, Menschen komplett bedeckt. Und diese Polkadots bedeuten für sie also ein Motiv der Entgrenzung. Also es ist jetzt nichts Schlimmes für sie, sondern ein Motiv, das alles gleich macht, also ähnlich im Buddhismus, eine Entgrenzung ihrer Persönlichkeit hin zu einer allgemeinen Freiheit. Der ganze Film, der auch von entsprechender Musik unterlegt ist, spiegelt so den Geist der Hippie-Generation wider, also die Befreiung von bürgerlichen Zwängen und Moralvorstellungen. Ein heiterer, sinnlicher Film präsentieren wir mit Pippi Lottirist, die auf eine sehr spielerische Art das menschliche Lustempfinden erkundet. Der Film heißt Pickelporno, soll aber keine falschen Erwartungen wecken, weil er hat nicht sehr viel mit einem Pornofilm gemeinsam. Es gibt da zwar extreme Close-ups von Körperregionen, aber insgesamt ist die Kamera eher spielerisch. Also es gibt Kameraschwenke in die Natur hinein, wo die Natur erkundet wird und dann Überblendungen, psychedelische Bilder in üppiger Farbigkeit. Also der Künstlerin geht es eher darum, eine andere Art von Bilder zu finden, wie sie Lustempfinden zwischen zwei Menschen zeigen kann. In unseren Filminstallationen mit Mona Touw ist es weniger erotisch, da sind die Bilder eher befremdlich. Eine Filminstallation der libanesischen Künstlerin. Sie besteht aus einem gedeckten Tisch mit einem Stuhl davor, Teller, Besteck und ein Glas stehen darauf. Der Teller hat in der Mitte eine Aussparung und dadurch wird der Blick freigegeben auf einen darunterliegenden Monitor. Und Mona Touw zeigt darin eine endoskopische Reise durch ihren Körper. Der Film heißt Deep Throat. Die endoskopische Kamera gleitet also in den Mund hinein, durch die Speiseröhre hindurch hinab in ihren Verdauungstrakt. Und der Titel des Filmes, also Deep Throat, bezieht sich auf einen gleichnamigen Pornofilm-Klassiker aus den 70er Jahren. Mona Touw greift das Thema auf, allerdings eben mit diesen ambivalenten Bildern, indem sie sowohl auf die Wunschvorstellungen des Mannes als auch auf seine Ängste von einer Vagina dentata Bezug nimmt.
Neben der Auseinandersetzung mit dem eigenen Körper beschäftigen sich die ausgestellten Arbeiten auch mit Themen wie der Rolle der Frau in der Gesellschaft. Zum Beispiel die 3 Arbeiten von Ulrich Rosenbach, die einem umfangreichen Zyklus mit dem Titel Hauben für eine verheiratete Frau zuzuordnen sind. Darin setzt sich die Künstlerin kritisch mit gesellschaftlichen Rollenklischees verheirateter Frauen auseinander. Ulrike Ottinger porträtiert in Bildnis einer Trinkerin aus dem Jahr 1979 2 Frauen, die sich den gängigen Rollenklischees widersetzen und sie ihrer Lust am Alkoholexzess hemmungslos hingeben. Zur selben Generation wie die schon erwähnte Yayoi Kusama gehört die fast 90-jährige rumänische Künstlerin Ceta Prateșcu, die hier mit 2 Filmen vertreten ist. Trotz des repressiven Umfelds in Rumänien unter dem Diktator Nicolae Ceausescu hat Prateșcu eine eigene Bildsprache entwickelt und mit ungeheurer Produktivität ein äußerst umfassendes Gesamtwerk geschaffen. Nun möchten wir zum Abschluss noch Informationen zum 3. Teil unserer Ausstellungsreihe bekannt geben. Aller Voraussicht nach kann er leider nicht, wie ursprünglich geplant, jetzt im Herbst, im September bei uns im Sammlungsgebäude eröffnet werden. Wegen baulicher Maßnahmen verschiebt sich die Eröffnung um einige Monate. Sobald uns Daten fix vorliegen, werden wir diese auch bekannt geben. Nun kommen wir zum Dank. Allen voran danken wir natürlich allen beteiligten Künstlerinnen für ihre wunderbaren Arbeiten. Dann danken wir dem gesamten Team der Sammlung Goetz, allen voran selbstverständlich Ingvild Goetz, aber auch all unseren Kollegen, allen Mitarbeitern im Haus der Kunst, die an der Ausstellung beteiligt waren und insbesondere hier dem Medienteam um Moritz Friedrich. Cornelia Gockel und ich stehen jetzt im Anschluss, dann später im Luftschutzkeller noch für Fragen zu den Arbeiten zur Verfügung. Jetzt wünschen wir Ihnen einen anregenden Abend und bedanken uns sehr für Ihre Aufmerksamkeit.
Vielen Dank.
Herzlich willkommen auch von meiner Seite noch einmal anlässlich der Ausstellung, der Eröffnung von Vivan Sundaram, Disjunctures. Mein Name ist Schneider. Und ich bin Kuratorin hier im Haus und zeichne zusammen mit Deepak Ananth verantwortlich für die Ausstellung. Es ist heute Abend meine ehrenvolle Aufgabe, Ihnen den Künstlervortrag von Vivan Sundaram und das anschließende Gespräch zwischen dem Künstler Deepak Ananth und dem Künstler anzukündigen. Sie hatten ja inzwischen alle schon kurz die Gelegenheit, sich mit den Werken in der Ausstellung vertraut zu machen und konnten sich von dem Formen- und Materialreichtum und den vielschichtigen kunsthistorischen Referenzen in Sundarams Werk anregen lassen. Die in der Ausstellung versammelten Arbeiten umfassen 50 Jahre künstlerisches Schaffen und reichen somit in das ikonische Jahr 1968 zurück. 1968, das Jahr der internationalen Studenten-, Arbeiter- und Bürgerrechtsbewegung, hat nicht zuletzt das politische Bewusstsein des indischen Künstlers Sundaram, der zu diesem Zeitpunkt an der Slade School in London studierte, nachhaltig geprägt. Sundaram beschreibt sich selbst als politischen Künstler und als kritischen Zeitzeugen. Seine politische Haltung ist aber untrennbar mit seinen plastischen Ausdrucksmitteln, einer Poetik der Herstellung verknüpft. Es ist also im Spannungsfeld zwischen Politik und Poetik, Ethik und Ästhetik, in dem das multimediale Werk von Vivan Sundaram Gestalt annimmt. Früh schon eignete er sich zunächst als Maler, wie Sie oben sehen konnten, das Prinzip der Collage und Assemblage an und brach mit ästhetischen Konventionen. Künstlerische Strömungen, wie Pop Art und Minimalismus waren dabei formativ für ihn. Ab den 1990er Jahren schloss sein Schaffen dann auch zunehmend Mixed-Media-Installationen mit ein, in denen er eine Vielzahl von unterschiedlichen Materialien verwendet. Er gilt nicht zuletzt deshalb auch als Pionier der Installationskunst in Indien. In den kommenden 30 Minuten wird er uns einen Einblick in die Entwicklung seiner Werke und Ideen geben, in denen er immer wieder auf Fragestellungen um Geschichte, Erinnerungskultur und Archiv aufgreift. Im Anschluss an seinen Vortrag wird der indische Kurator und Kunsthistoriker Deepak Ananth in einem Statement und im Gespräch mit dem Künstler die angesprochenen Themen weiter vertiefen und reflektieren. Deepak Ananth ist Kunsthistoriker, Kritiker und Kurator in Paris und er ist außerdem Professor an der École des Beaux-Arts in Caen. Er ist der Autor zahlreicher Publikationen, unter anderem auch zu Vivan Sundaram, unter anderem auch zu unserem neuen erschienenen Buch, was Sie jetzt hier in der Buchhandlung schon erhalten können, aber auch zu anderen Familienmitgliedern, aus zum Beispiel eben auch, hat er ein Buch herausgegeben der großen indischen Malerin Amrita Shergill oder auch dem Großvater Umrao Singh Shergill, einen großen, charismatischen und begnadeten Amateurfotografen. Ich darf Sie vielleicht an der Stelle auch noch einmal hinweisen auf unser Veranstaltungsprogramm, was jetzt im Laufe der Ausstellungslaufzeit noch auf uns zukommt. Und zwar ist am 7. August haben wir eine Veranstaltung, eine Talks and Tours, also eine geführte, also mit einem speziellen Fokus eben in der Ausstellung mit Leonhard Emmerling aus dem Goethe-Institut in New Delhi. Und am 20.09. wird dann nochmal Deepak Ananth in einem Vortrag zu uns sprechen, in dem er insbesondere die Aspekte der Künstlerdynastie, also der Familie von Vivan Sundaram, vertieft. Es bleibt mir jetzt eigentlich nur noch, Ihnen einen sehr anregenden Abend zu wünschen. Und I hand over to you, Vivan. We are all excited to hear what you're going to tell us. Thank you.
Good evening, friends, and it's a very tight timing schedule, and I'll try my best. Oh, what happens? This moves by itself, it's not supposed to. So I'll move as quickly as I can and start with my talk. The second title is Dislocate, Diverge. I've been invited to the Haus der Kunst twice by Chris Durkin, an old friend who presented an Indian artist family, Amrita Shergill, which included a large body of my work, and I'm delighted and grateful that he is present here. And by Oqui and Visa, who invited me to stage an exhibition scaling several decades of my work. The curator, Deepak Ananth, and I agreed to call this exhibition Disjunctures. I thank Haus der Kunst Chief Curator Ulrich Wilmes, Assistant Curator Anna Schneider, who's been the strong and resilient backbone to this exhibition, who just spoke to you, and the catalogue. Tina Kohler, old friend from 2006, who orchestrates the exhibition's arrival and installation, including serious difficulties on the ground. My friend Deepak Ananth, the curator, who selected the works with Oqui and Anna, and has written a brilliant introduction in the catalogue. He spoke exceptionally well yesterday, completely extempo. The authors, Andres Susanne, Ashish Rajadaksh, and Katya Garçon-Anton, who I'm very pleased is also here for their calibrated texts. Ashish Rajadaksh, the entire Haus der Kunst staff, the installation team, and especially to conservator Susanne van der Groben, if I pronounce it correctly, including my artist assistant from Delhi, Pravat Mishra. also friends of the Haus der Kunst for hosting the preview, and museum directors, curators, art historians, and friends who have come from London, Germany, Sharjah, and India. And from New Delhi, special mention to the Kiran Nada Museum chairperson of the art and the director, Rubina Karode, who I'm very pleased is also here. They have handed over from my retrospective the majority of works in this exhibition. A big thank you to you. Oqui invited me as a contemporary Indian artist, and unlike most artists, I don't chaff at this because I believe in history, historicization, situatedness, and critique of the national modern reconstructions, third world ideologies, post-colonial contemporaneity, and older and newer internationalism. I am a bricklayer within the expanded field of modern art history as well as within the lived histories of the contemporary to which I belong. Oqui's position in the discourse on contemporary art as a thinker and curator is seminal. He has advanced perspectives from the vantage point of view of the South, from the South, in a way that transforms the discourse of contemporaneity within what he calls the global public sphere. I quote a small passage written very recently. We must continue to dare to inscribe the important place of art and its complex logics across time, histories, and changing contexts as the first priority of the museum. We must develop a curatorial methodology, something that has provided me as a thinker not only of forms and signs, but histories and their potentialities. The final thank you then is to Oqui and Visa, the exceptional theorist-curator who has believed in my work, invited me here, and written the foreword for the catalogue. His missing presence today at Haus der Kunst is for me a deep and wounding loss. My presentation is a fast run through the exhibition that will connect 8 distinctly different units, their similarities as well as the differences. Will interpolate other artworks as this reflects my collage montage approach. I am a materialist. This is from a site-specific installation in the Victoria Memorial in Calcutta, which I did 20 years ago. And the title History Project is a remarkable book which is available in the bookstore. So do get it if you are interested.
A rail track, the spine of the show. If, for Marx, the concept metaphor for history was the locomotive, then we cannot forget Walter Benjamin's sardonic afternote. History is not so much a train ride, but grabbing the emergency brake. Joto Moth, Toto Path, many views, many paths, proclaimed Ramakrishna Paramhans.
This is a project I did with the film historian Ashish Rajadaksh. So it's a contemporary history project and a large-scale work. This is a container which was first shown in Bombay and is now being shown in the Kiran Nada
I went
Museum
right
of
uptown
Art.
to the mill district, the factory district, where the working class lived and where the strike was going on. And to my absolute amazement, there was a machine gun, probably a brain gun, in the back of the truck, and it opened fire. There were people lying on the ground bleeding. People were wounded. I don't know whether people were killed in that actual incident.
This is a material from the Imperial War Museum of a person, Melvin Jones, who was present at that time. And this moment in history has sort of almost been forgotten. This is a major work which occupies the central space in this exhibition, and it refers to a moment 25 years ago of the killing of Muslims in the city of Bombay. And this is a work that I've been engaged with, and I'm very pleased by the beautiful display. This is at the Kiran Nada Museum, done 4 years ago. Nasreen Mohammadi made contact with Karl Andre when he came to Delhi, and they established a friendship and relationship. This graphic inlay work on the marble has a reflection or a quotation of her own work, which you see here. There are different scales of work in the exhibition, which you will see, but I'm just animating them in an informal manner. The gun carriage, as I said, is to move, and it has moved many years ago, as you can see from the date, to the Tate Modern when it first opened. The 12-bed ward, I include fragments from a section of the work which you'll see of where a slum dwelling has been destroyed, and laying the path in this graphic, it also becomes a column. The importance of just the simple device of the bulb and the shadows that it creates was a relationship that I wanted to establish between the soles of the shoes, which are a very strong material, and its dematerialization in the shadows that you see below. Again, the continuation of a certain reference to violence, and this is a domestic violence that took place in Bombay, which in fact the memorial is based on. And I did this work called Houseboat, and in fact it's just a house that has very judiciously been selected for this exhibition, and it is placed between the drawings of engine oil and charcoal. And the vulnerability of this very strong structure at one level, and the fact that it has been made by handmade paper is what I wanted to engage with. And it's an attempt at a distanciation from that moment of violence, which already has attributes of its language in memorial to this work. River Carries Its Past is also a work that is beautifully displayed in the exhibition, and it has a rich history of being done in a bleak town in the northeast of England called Middlesbrough, which touches the North Sea, and this is the River Tees that flows into the North Sea. The Vikings landed there. Subsequently, the famous Captain Cook was born there, and both industrialization took place. R.L. Stevenson made his first locomotive. So it's an attempt at a work where I'm converting the drawing into a graphic and sculptural object. At the end of the room is his work called 100,000 Sorties, which you see here, and it is in reference to the Gulf War. And
sorties known as arc light. When bomb release point is reached, each stratofortress drops some 30 tons of explosives on targets more than 30,000 feet below.
So the relationship between the very specific political content and the engagement with material, both in its fragile aspect of the handmade paper and the drawing, and the use of engine oil, marks the difference between the next series. The next series is called A Long Night, and I was a student at the Slade School and went through a course in cinema and about the Second World War. And it was a memorable experience for me when I visited Auschwitz 20 years later, and that relationship between power of cinema as memory, and memory becomes as proactive as the reality that you are actually walking in. For example, that's the gate on that side is the entrance to the concentration camp Birkenau. So I did this series of drawings which you see in the gallery, where the engine oil and the charcoal drawings are placed opposite each other of two different kinds of war. And the charcoal drawings have a greater density, a greater aspect of depth in it, and an expressionism, and that corresponds to the meaning of the work. The next, we move to my interest in collaboration, in working with people in other disciplines. And Ram Kinkar is a great modernist artist in Shantiniketan. And I worked with Anuradha Kapoor, who is here, theatre director, and conceived the work. This work you see at the entrance, and this is based, refers to Ram Kinkar's work called Milk Hall. And I use then the sculptural object both as a prop. And Ram Kinkar believed in speed, and as therefore took two parts of the motor car and communicate that relationship.
And this is the milk hall. Okay. So this is my great army, the Santhal family in milk hall. The fact that they are workers and the congregation, of course, makes it a force, and so it could look like any march, is making a statement.
Another historical project, these are potsherds from the excavation from the port town of Muziris, which was active about 200 BC, and it was discovered only about 15 or 20 years ago that this port town thrived, and there was a great deal of trade between Rome and as well as West Asia. And these excavations with these potsherds fascinated me, and I created a big installation about 20 meters long and 3-4 meters wide, and built up this as a base for the video that you see here called Black Gold. So I float the video upon the potsherds, in which in this passage you see is a river bed, the water flows through. So that's the base on which the video that you see at the end of the room. So the idea of having counter movements, both of material, and that in a sense the work is a performance for the camera, as the water and the oil are put into this installation that you see at the bottom. I come now towards the end of my talk. Trash is a series which also is there at the entrance of the exhibition, and it is about creating a certain spatialization for trash in the way that it is displayed, but it is also an interest in thinking about photography. So the work called Prospect, which you are seeing here, panning up, is about depth of field, about how you, from a certain vantage point, perceive a vast distance. The accumulation of all these materials, Prabhat is here, young artist who helped me build this, and a miniaturized city, a kind of real but a fantasy of the accumulation of garbage, but it's given a form, and it then is engaged with photographic practice. There is a video also running side by side, which you can see, and here you will see at the end a fragment of that video. So it's a lot about the fragility and the unstable nature of a lot of urban human habitation. The next point of view is the top angle, or the plan view, or in today's terminology, Google view. So this photograph also is beautifully displayed at the center, and by photographing it from the top, then the fact that it gets all flattened, the bringing up of the aspect of pattern, of flatness, a modernist perspective. And here then you see, as you will move further down, what you would not see in the perspectival view. And by using these two devices, I engage with the act of looking, but also of displaying a huge amount of garbage in relationship to both design, beauty, and poetry. And by bringing this video here on top of this master plan, which you then can hear on headphones, I bring the two together. The other version which you do see is the digital manipulation of the image, and here in the exhibition as well, the digital manipulation informs that it is not real. The design, the set itself has multiple points of view, and here's just a playful interpretation of the work called Object with Props. So the performative aspect returns to my work at different moments. This video is very beautifully displayed on the staircase as you go up, and just below is the mill recall underneath. And this is a work I did called River Garden, where I float this large 20-meter long raft with plastic water bottles. And this is the boy Marian Hussain, who worked with Pravat as a waste picker, and with the briefest of rehearsals did this very poetic work. I now come to a work which everybody loves, and how did this 25-year-old student who was much of the time on the streets protesting against the Americans for Vietnam, how did he manage to paint these paintings? And it's very gratifying that it's like that romantic story that in an attic in London, where a friend of mine had kept them, and he had died, and I located them, and you can see them. So very briefly, this title also is part of the kind of collage juxtaposition in my work, and of spanning across completely unconnected, seemingly unconnected references. But there is a relationship, because Stan Brakhage also was fighting or opposing in cinema any realism or depth of field. And it is my tutor Kitai who brought me into an awareness both of the Persian miniature reference, but Stan Brakhage came to, somebody brought his work and had shown it. And so you can see that it's entirely surface. It is where painting also via Jackson Pollock has come to the surface, and there is no edge, there is no frame. It's continuously moving, and that inspired me to do this work. We come to the moment of May 68, and May 68 is an anniversary, a 50th anniversary, And here this photograph, this painting is in the Kiranada Museum, and earlier on you saw the container and connections between the way that the container is painted and some color pattern in the painting have a connection. And this is another version, a kind of quotation from the student revolt. So in this connection, I have done a recent contemporary work, and it is both an anniversary of that, a public one, as well as a 50th anniversary and a personal 75th anniversary. This is in, well, it's Geeta and me in London. Thank you. I kept to my 30 minutes. Hello, Deepak.
Hello, Vivan. Nice to meet you again. Thank you for this superb, I'd say almost a film that you've made in this presentation. You start off by we see the artist as archivist, and we have these sort of words which come at us through this pile of books. And then we see the artist also as a kind of allegorist, and I'd say the archival impulse or the allegorical impulse, among various other impulses, of course, traverse your work. But I'm struck, I've always been struck, but what you've shown brings back to me the fact that how much a cinematographic language has informed your work in very different ways. And the fact that, what you call your talk, dislocations, and the other title being Diverge, right? No.
Diverge.
Yes. It's the whole idea about, I think in all your work, in different ways, the idea is really to dislocate things, to create new meanings by these dislocations, by these disjunctions or disjunctures. And so there's this kind of force field which you create, and I think that's certainly evident in the rooms we see here, how a kind of tension is created between elements sometimes which don't have any connection or seemingly, but then they all come together to create what Barthes would have called a third meaning. I can't resist quoting this something from Godard when he says that it might well be true that one has to choose between ethics and aesthetics, but it is no less true that whichever one chooses, one will always find it at the end of the road, for the very definition of the human condition should be in the mise en scène itself. And I think this sort of encapsulates beautifully not only your work when you turn to installation, but even earlier on when you started off as a painter. And I think the London paintings which are here reveal the kind of complexities of your language and the way this tension is maintained between form or formal abstract elements and elements which are obviously function as signs or figurative elements, and how you create this sort of, again, a play of juxtapositions, which I think is another word which I think is important in the way you proceed. But already one senses, of course, it's partly the montage and collage principle which you adapt, but one also sees how this sort of collage and montage principle already is putting pressure on the frame, on the pictorial frame, and how so it's not surprising that at some stage this sort of the tension becomes so extreme that you actually break out of the frame. And as I've had occasion to mention earlier, I think probably the move towards installation art in 1993 comes out of a sense of your desire to be as inclusive as possible, which is to say to let in the world into your work as much as possible. And I think obviously the fact that installation takes place in a space and is spatial and temporal necessitates a kind of a deambulation in space. Answers to this need to question the separation between space reserved for art, or what the frame traditionally accomplishes, and what lies beyond it. And I think this way of contesting this limit is not only of the frame, but of frames, works in general, is also, I think, very much part of your work. But I wondered, because I should also ask you one or two questions about...
I'd love you to go on.
Which is what was my brief, but it's interesting for me that when the first major foray into installation is also in a way dictated by a very sort of tragic event in the Indian polity, which is to say the massacre of Muslims. So it's almost as if the form or the format of installation imposed itself partly because of this particular reality. I mean, would you agree with that? I mean, or...
Yeah, I think at one level, as a direct answer, it is so, but I think there's a larger frame, and for us, being brought up in modern India, in a Nehruvian socialist India, that there could be such a frontal assault on the very values that we cherished, so that this national modern was almost as if were taken away from under our feet. And the assault was so violent. I mean, the violence is evident in the number of, in India's most advanced capitalist country, Bombay, 2,000 Muslims could just be butchered, whereas the Indian state with its armies could have stopped it, within 24 hours. So, and we are seeing now a repeat of that with our Prime Minister Modi, and all of you would read. So I think that it's this that all of us are struggling, that this other frame of what one grew up for, a larger universal vision, the modern secular, was being attacked. The attack on Muslims and minorities is there. But as an artist, as a person who's trying to think through, this was equally important, that how this position, this ideology, was also being smashed to the ground. And most intelligent people, they might have studied in MIT, and they'd say, yes, now we have to get back to our Hindu values.
Yes, of course. But I was also trying to query the idea that perhaps the installation format, because of its inclusiveness, allows for this more complex reading, whereas obviously a painting, being the kind of flat object it is, wouldn't probably wouldn't be profound enough in negotiating such a complex, and tragic event as it turned out as it was. But which is why I bring up installation only because you're. Of course, because you're one of the pioneer artists in India to have done installation work. And it seems as if, contrary to, for example, the recent trend, certainly to Rosalind Krauss, for example, who's attacking installation art and is trying to suggest a return to what she calls the technical support, which is another name for medium specificity. So we seem to be going back to back to square one. So it seems interesting to suggest that installation as a form, and certainly when it is practiced outside of the American and European sphere, does allow for a potential decolonization of art practice, and which I think perhaps the October group is not entirely attentive to, but it's not. I mean, I'm not taking. I mean, entering into polemics with that. But since this is a strong position which has come out recently, I think it's probably important to assert that installation is also the occasion for the play of difference, but also how difference can be relational. And Frederick Jameson has this phrase in his big postmodernist book about difference relates. And I think installation art does sort of bring up this whole, the possibility really of creating something which is complex, but which also suggests the possible links rather than purely differences, which and the whole idea of relationship and difference being orchestrated within one configuration. And I think a lot of your work, when you do practice installation, suggests that this kind of force field, this kind of tension. And equally, I mean, I'm struck, like many people, that the way you, your sense of history and sense of art history has, proceeds in tandem with your sense for materials, and how, for example, when you're referring obliquely or directly to, say, minimalist forms, or even pop art, or even Russian constructivism, the references are not in any way the kind of pastiche or parody or the play of quotations which one associates with postmodernist art, but more that kind of quotations which, again, dislodge meanings, or in the way Walter Benjamin understood quotations as sort of defamiliarizing or estranging the viewer, the more to sort of jolt him back into another kind of consciousness. I just wondered also, in terms of the materials that you use, and you have a great sensibility for, the tactile aspect of materials. Very often they are poor materials, but is that also a way of the idea of the artisanal or the handmade? Is that also perhaps in today's situation, in the globalized space, the whole idea of the handmade object and now has a different kind of aura. It's a way perhaps of resisting the kind of homogenizing, globalized, monolithic sort of global space system. And I wondered whether the poetics of the handmade, which in the past was obviously, for example, minimalist art is obviously interested in other things and not in terms of the human, of the touch or the autograph sign. But paradoxically, I think now the way you handle materials, that's a way of, again, a kind of resistant shard to the kind of, homogenizing edifice that globalization is. And I think perhaps would you?
Yeah, well, constantly, in fact, very intentionally, I brought this, very short clip of the Victoria Memorial Project and the scale on which that site-specific installation is created, and the number of elements and themes, the huge amount of research that went into it, is at a very different register than the memorial work, which is just based on this one newspaper photograph.
Yes.
And that how by continuous repetition, repetition is of course a well-known trope of modernist art, but to have a much more inclusive and freer, entry of other things. So I think that constantly, as I do something on a massive scale, as the memorial project in Calcutta, this memorial comes down to a small unit, or just the shoes. Another aspect of my work is that I very spontaneously come across something, and I feel that this one unit, as I said, when the waste pickers said, when I said, why do you cut the soles of the shoes? So they said, we have to cut off the Nike sign because that doesn't sell, but it's the sole that has value. That gives us the 1 rupee or 2. So from that you then build up an installation. So I'm very interested in this relationship of spontaneously coming across something. Or as I said, when I went to Poland as a state guest, and this guide said, "Oh, do you want to go to Auschwitz?" So I said, "Well, Krakow and Auschwitz," he said, no, it's just 50 kilometers down the road, and you can go and see it. And so, as I said, experiencing cinema 20 years before brought the two together. And so the cinema also has informed me. So I'm very open to a very unprogrammed way of working, and yet through the process of working, I kind of start giving it form, giving it a more complex meaning to it.
Yes. Yes, and perhaps, I mean, entirely, I see what you mean. This process, this material, there's also perhaps a sense of, certainly in the installations, the idea about duration and therefore time. I mean, the time of looking, which is sort of can be distended, which is also a way of slowing down perception. I think these are, again, very important modalities of the way one approaches the kind of modalities which become part of the viewing experience. We are sort of far from the kind of sort of instantaneousness of, which is one of the modernist tropes about taking the painting at one glance, etc. But I want to sort of perhaps end by, adapting this. Another quotation, this time from Matisse, famously said that the importance of an artist is to be measured by the number of plastic signs that he's introduced into the language. And perhaps I think that could be now adapted. Certainly, I think it's very appropriate to what your achievement for the last 50 years shows us, is that perhaps the importance of an artist to be measured by the different ways in which he or she, questions a medium or goes beyond it or transgresses it. And I think this idea about going beyond a limit or beyond a frame is something which is recurrent in your work, and which places you and your work each time on some kind of new threshold.
Yeah, well, just that the medium specificity certainly deeply interests me. But as you can see, in recent years, the durational aspect you spoke about, my interest then in connecting with performance, with theater, whether it's the sound work I've done, this David Chapman and Valentina, the sound art. I should have mentioned that you're here also, who have designed the sound work, which you heard a very brief clip from. So I'm very happy that David Chapman, the sound designer for the work that you saw briefly, has also come down here. Sorry, David, for not mentioning that you're here. So as I said, that this crossing over of connecting to theater, to film people, and having a very open platform, and where somewhere you're an author, somewhere you are creating an open field, and that the collaboration, the working together, having multiple authors. So in the last two works, there have been Ashish Rajadaksh as well as Anuradha Kapoor and Shantanu Bose as two main theatre persons who have created that work. So I think that displacement of my being the singular author and making others come in to the field has been something that I have attempted.
Yes, and I think what the most recent work, of which we see not the performative aspect, but just the terracotta sculptures, is that it's a move towards a more encompassing experience, let's say almost like a total work of art, except rather than the traditional Gesamtkunstwerk, a total work of art, it's also open-ended. I mean, that's a sort of that's something which sort of, it's not a closed system the way, a traditional, what is traditionally known as a total work of art, and certainly Wagner, for example. But here it's more something which is, poaching on or encroaching upon, inviting, other elements like theater, performance, installation, sculpture, etc. But then they each have their own sort of, register or momentum, and how it comes together and then it disperses. And I think that's a nice sort of, the open-endedness of it.
It often fails. That's part of the project, yes. As the title goes, the meanings of failed action.
Exactly.
I think that you have to build that into it. I think that even, when you control it and you have done it for decades, then you know exactly what you're doing. But when you let the field open, then all kinds of stray cats and dogs come in.
Exactly.
And it makes the work.
And it's all for stray cats and dogs. But which again, I think to conclude, it's sort of, the open-endedness is also another way of saying the whole idea of always being on the threshold of something new, something so we just look forward to more thresholds. Walter Benjamin spoke about what he called the science of thresholds.
Just one last word, if I can say, because I have Rubina Karode, the curator of the Kiran Museum, is here, and those who might have seen it, a completely different space in a shopping mall, and you meander through. The maximum height of the ceiling, which we had a lot of problems with, is just about 3 meters, and how the work sits there touching the ceiling, and how in this space the powerful height and length and breadth, the same work is placed, and how does the meaning of that work and its value and its representation, alter the understanding of the work. And certainly museums are about power, and as I said, the Kiran Museum is a very, if I can be free to use the word, a very open, homely museum. And here, this is not exactly a homely, it's a house, but it also has the power of its structure. And I must say that I come back to Okwi. He was very clear, if you remember, and Anna, that when we said we'd like this and that, he said, now look, Vivan, you've done some very strong work. Get down to it and place it, and you'll see the results will be much better than if you try to fiddle some gaga waka garment work and some other, work from another thing, and you'll do much better. And so, a curator and a thinker, a very political person, is in fact thinking very strongly in terms of form and selection. And I think that's paid off, maybe his understanding of this space. And I think that that's been a very special experience for me and for many viewers, how they moved along one central axis, going back and forth, rather than going round. And that's the difference.
Okay. Thank you.